I'm Florence and I'll be your host today. And I'm really, really thrilled to welcome a very, very special guest. So hello and welcome, Rick Hanson. Thank you
Hello,
for
Florence.
being,
I am happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for being here today and for spending this hour, maybe a little more with us, talking about what you're so passionate about, brain, neuroscience, Buddhism, spirituality, ancient wisdom. The Buddha's brain has no secret for you, but here we'll talk about our brains and how we can combine neuroscience and ancient wisdom in something you call Neurodharma, a 7-step journey, and we'll talk about it, that invites us to connect to our deep true nature, to be aware, wise, loving, and pure. These are your words. Your last book, Neurodharma, has just been released in French, and we are happy to have it on our website. But today is special because after many, many months of translations, we are thrilled, really thrilled and happy, and to launch your amazing online program, Neurodharma, in French. It's the first time this is translated into French, and it's really exclusive to Quantum Way. But before I give you the floor, a few informations here. We'll talk about Neurodharma, and you will guide us in 1 or 2 simple practices for about 45 minutes. And then we'll open to Q&A. At the end of our Q&A session, so in about an hour or so, we'll have 3 people win a Neurodharma book or an audiobook that we have in our catalog. So stay with us. We'll do that at the end. We'll really pick 3 people random in the audience. We also have a very special offer today, and I want to do it right now. So we have a 20 euros coupon on the already very interesting early bird price for the Neurodharma online program. The code is, and I'm sure somebody will put it in the chat, it's RH 20 euros. And with that, you get the program for 197 euros instead of 347. So, and this offer is limited in time, so don't wait too long. Now back to Neurodharma. After this long introduction, I think because people like to, and it allowed people to arrive. So thank you for being there. It's really amazing. I'm really, really happy to have you.
Oh, I feel honored to be here, and also honored that 265 people are interested in this material and this opportunity for helping ourselves every day to heal a little, grow a little, and awaken a little every day, step by step by step, as we move ourselves up our own mountain of awakening. So I feel a sense of community and collaboration even with those who are participating. So thank you. Really, thank you from my heart. I care a lot about this material. It's sacred, it's beautiful, it's powerful, and it's true. And it's the opportunity for all of us. Really, it's openly available to us to use in our own lives every day. So thank you. And thank you very much, Florence and Quantum Way, for having faith in this material and having faith in me and trust and respect. And I'm very glad to be here.
Yeah, we didn't know when we asked that 2 years ago how dense and profound and practical also this program is. And the more I dive into it, and the more astonished I am. Maybe the first question I will have, and it's why Neurodharma and what it is, and what do you mean by that?
Yeah, we can know ourselves in 2 ways. We can know ourselves from the inside out in our direct and immediate experience, most of which is not verbal. And this way of knowing ourselves has been available to humanity for thousands and thousands of years in many different cultures and many different traditions. And recently, in the last 100 years, with the emergence of modern psychology, we are able to know ourselves and to help ourselves directly and subjectively. Okay, good. In the last 100 years or so, also, increasingly, we can know ourselves from the outside in, objectively, through the windows of science, which increasingly understands what is happening in the living body, especially its nervous system and its headquarters, the brain, when we are suffering or happy, when we are hating or loving. What is actually happening in the physical systems that are the basis, inside ordinary reality certainly, for our consciousness. And for me, Neurodharma is where these two ways of knowing ourselves meet. I use the word Dharma because it's a nod to the sacred Eastern traditions that I have been trained in. But really, the word itself is not religious. It simply means truth. What is the truth of things? So there's the inner truth of things, and then there's the objective truth of things. And Neurodharma is where they meet. And where they meet is full of opportunity. It's like very fertile ground in which we can move back and forth from knowing ourselves subjectively and then knowing ourselves objectively in ways that are very, very practical. Because if you know what is happening in your brain, plausibly, reasonably, neuroscience is a baby science. We do not have perfect knowledge, but we have some knowledge that we can actually use in practical ways. When you know a little bit of what is happening in your brain, when you're calm and strong, when your heart is open, even while you are sticking up for yourself and those you care about, what is even happening in your brain when you move into states of mind that are very spacious, very peaceful, very open to everything. When you know more and more what is happening in your brain, when that's occurring, you can gradually encourage, you can support, you can encourage those neural processes and strengthen them so that, in effect, to finish, you can use your mind to change your brain, to change your mind for the better, to help yourself and other beings. That's the great opportunity of Neurodharma.
So it's really going from bottom up and up to bottom, right? Little.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And you were saying that it's really important to understand what happens. Well, it's not important, but it's better to understand what happens in the brain. And that's what happens in the brain when we're meditating, and why is it? Because the main object or subject of the program is really based on meditation, but meditation with all the knowledge that you give and all the thing that we can do in our everyday life. It's not only meditation, it's also what we can bring in our everyday life from this wisdom and from this knowledge that you give us.
Yeah.
And bring it in the everyday life, right?
I would broaden your word meditation to experience in general. This is a very experiential program because our experience is what we really care about. We could go to a restaurant and we could look at the menu with all these pictures and words. We don't eat the menu. We eat the meal. That's the experience that we go there for. So experience is what is most fundamental. Ideas are helpful in terms of influencing our experience, but the purpose of them, certainly inside this program, is at the end of the day, what does it feel like to be you? What does it feel like to be you, including when the world is hard, the world is challenging, when other people are upsetting, when you have losses, when you're dealing with pain in your body, when you look out at our crazy world? What is it like to be you? And what I've done is applied to the upper reaches of human potential, a very basic idea that we use in all kinds of other areas. If you want to get good at something, study people who are really good at it. Like I'm a old rock climber, and I will watch people who are much better than me, and I will see how they move their bodies, and I will get a sense of their attitudes, and then I will start to help some of that come to life inside me. That in that way, I took a look at people who are very far along, enlightened, saints, great teachers, great sages, around the world's traditions, in particular in the tradition that I know well, which is Buddhism, but that's just one route up the mountain of awakening. And as people get closer and closer to the top, they look and feel more and more like each other. So we can look at them. We can look at them and go, how do you do that? How in the world do you stay peaceful and happy in the core of your being, even while you are dealing with really, really hard things? How do you actually do that? And so what I've seen in those people is they have these 7 qualities, really, really developed. And we can feel each one of these 7 experiences ourselves, and we can strengthen them. And because what we experience can gradually become hardwired into us by repeatedly experiencing these 7 qualities of awakening, we strengthen them inside ourselves. So I look out to those people who are very far along, and they all have a very steady mind. They all have a very warm heart. They all have a great deal of equanimity. They rest in a sense of fullness already without craving. There's a contentment that's fundamental in the core of their being, even as they try to accomplish different things. Those 3 right there, steadiness, lovingness, and fullness. Also, maybe a little more sophisticated or esoteric, they have a quality of accepting themselves completely and abiding as their mind as a whole, rather than being caught up in a lot of inner conflict in which parts are struggling with parts. There's a sense of wholeness. There's also a sense of being in the present. Their received nowness. They are really right here, right now, at the emergent edge of the arising moment. Also, 6th, they have a sense of being open into allness, connected with everything, less sense of self, no sense of self, falling away. And then last, most mysteriously and provocatively, they speak of a sense of timelessness, eternity, maybe in the language of religion, maybe not in the language of religion, simply talking about a space or field of vastness and stillness in which everything is unfolding. So we have these 7 qualities: steadiness, lovingness, fullness, wholeness, nowness, allness, and timelessness. And so what my program is about is taking them seriously in real life and asking ourselves, okay, what might be happening in the body when we are experiencing one or more of these 7 qualities? And based on that, how can we strengthen them a little bit every day so we too move farther and farther up our own mountain of awakening? And the emphasis I want to make throughout, and I'll finish my little rant here, throughout, it's about experience. It's about not what you think, but what you feel in your own body as your way of being.
Yeah, and that's what you're so passionate about, showing your book in French so you can see it. This is a mountain that we are all climbing little by little.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying. And it's really things that we all have those qualities.
Yeah.
And we can really sit into those and cultivate that.
Yeah.
To all go at the top of the mountain, right?
Yes, I have been in human potential and psychology since I was quite young. Went off to college when I was 16, and that was in 1969. So I've seen a lot. And I think sometimes that we are not ambitious enough in our own practice. I'm a therapist. I think it's very important to deal with suffering and depression, anxiety, trauma, and all the rest of that. Very, very important. And also, let us not lose sight of what is possible for us and other people, which also is what is going to be good for the world. Because as more and more people rest in a strong sense of resilient well-being and inner peace and the courage that those qualities support, we are going to have a better chance of helping our world come to a better place.
Yeah. Why is it? Because there are a lot of people saying the first two is steadying the mind and warming the heart. Yeah. And I was wondering what is it for you? What you mean by warming the heart?
Oh, sure. I mean the fundamental qualities of warming the heart. I mean, being open, having compassion, having a sense of caring for others, and very important, feeling cared about. We are profoundly social primates. And actually, I could have changed the order. I had to choose a sequence, but I put warming the heart first. Because I think that if there's not a warm heart, including for yourself, why practice at all? Why try to steady your mind if you don't have a fundamental sense of loyalty to yourself and being a friend to yourself, trying to help yourself in this challenging and difficult world? What is a very powerful and interesting practice that people might even explore is to see what it's like to rest in a combination of calming and open-heartedness. It's like a calm and loving heart, a warm heart at peace, whichever way you want to say it. Whether you do formal meditation, which is only a small part of this program, or you bring those qualities into your day, a dozen times a day, 5 seconds at a time, see what that's like to bring together that sense of steadiness, presence that is warm. Some people have steady mindfulness, but it is cold. It is not juicy, right? Other people, they have a big warm heart, but their mind is scattered all over the place. It's really good to bring them both together.
And I don't know what time we talked about doing a small practice so people can really sense what it is when you are guiding us into a practice, a very simple one. And because it's not about doing a 30-minute meditation every day, it's what you said, bringing small pieces of all this wisdom into our everyday life, and it can be really short. And with very short practice, we can really change many things in the brain. So I was wondering if it would not a good time to do some practice, and so we can go further after that.
I think that is a very good idea, Florence. Yes, it is true that long meditation or long days of inner practice can have a particularly powerful impact. I have done those, I do those. And what about the rest of the day? What about the rest of our life? There's a beautiful two sayings. I'll offer them, and then we'll do this guided experience. The first is that from Tibet, if you take care of the minutes, the years will take care of themselves. It's a beautiful, hopeful teaching, because the next minute is always the most important minute of our life, continuously, and it's the one over which we have the most influence. If you take care of the minutes, the years will take care of themselves. Oof, that's a relief. Okay. Second teaching, this comes from Suzuki Roshi, great Zen teacher from Japan, came to America in the 1960s, 50s and 60s and 70s. And he said, I am not sure if there are enlightened beings. I am sure that there are enlightened moments. That too is really, really full of hope. So I invite you to do this little practice focused on 3 breaths. And it will take a little more than 3 breaths for me to walk you through it. But if you want to do it in your life, you can do it 3 breaths in a row, one after the other, 3 kinds of breaths. And like any experiential practice, it's an experiment. You try something and you kind of see what happens, and you also try to learn from it. After we do the 3 breaths, we'll take another half a minute to really try to help the benefits of this practice leave lasting change in your nervous system. Okay, so here we go. With your eyes open or closed, sitting up straight or walking or standing or even lying down. If you're driving a car while you do this practice, be careful. Okay, first breath, breathing while feeling your chest as a whole. So simply be aware of sensations as you breathe. I'll do it with you in your chest as a whole. For example, sensations on the left side of your chest, on the right side of your chest, and being mindful of left and right together. Front and back together. Allow your awareness to open wide as you breathe while feeling your chest as a whole. In the second kind of breath, breathing while feeling caring. Bringing to mind one or more beings you care about, you like, maybe you have compassion for, maybe you love. Focusing on the feeling, not the ideas or the complicated story, the feeling, perhaps with a hand on your heart, of breathing while feeling caring. Simple feelings of wishing others well, friendliness, caring about justice. And third kind of breath, which might be a little challenging, breathing while feeling cared about. Bringing to mind what it's like to be with people who you are a teammate with, or people who are friendly toward you in your past or your present. Perhaps people who love you. Could be your pet. Keeping it simple, staying out of any complicated story, including about people who don't care about you. Focusing on the experience. What's it like to breathe while feeling cared about in one way or another? can you let yourself have the human, simple experience of being cared about in genuine ways? What happens inside you when you let yourself, in some real way, feel cared about? And then for the last few breaths, staying with whatever's beneficial that you're feeling. Simple sense of being present with an open heart. With a sense of this way of being sinking into you, becoming a part of you. A sense of you becoming a little more established in this way of being, present with an open heart. Okay. Coming back, and feel free to continue experiencing whatever might be beneficial for you. And we'll keep going with words. But it's very nice to be able to get in touch with and stay in touch with this way of being, even while the mind gets more active and engaged with language.
Yes, thank you. I could really feel things in my body, in my chest, and something very open at the beginning. And when you guided us into the caring of someone and being cared of, it was more a focus on the heart and like warmth coming. That's what I can feel in the body, but what happens here while we do that? Because I can't feel what's inside my brain.
That's right. So that little meditation engages several really important things in the brain. And of course, when our mind changes, our brain has to change as well. So when we feel something different in our experience, in our emotions, in our body, for example, something is changing in our neural circuitry. So what might that be? I will name very quickly, I go into more detail in the program and in my book, some of what's happening in your brain and why I do those 3 breaths in that way. First, when we tune in to the internal sensations, which is what happens in the first breath, feeling your breath in your body, in your chest, brings you into what's called interoception, which engages a part of the brain called the insula. There are 2 of them on the inside of the temporal lobes. They are involved with internal sensations like gut feelings. The insula also is very involved with empathy for the emotions of others. So if we strengthen it, by the way, in terms of getting more in touch with ourselves, we get a bonus benefit that helps us be more empathic for the emotions of others. Additionally, when we engage the insula, that acts kind of like a circuit breaker that stops activity or reduces activity in the default mode network of the brain, which is in the midline spreading to the sides and the back, which gets active when we're ruminating and we're doing a lot of mental time travel into the future or into the past that is very self-referential. Me, myself, and I, my precious, which causes a lot of suffering. Right there in the first 2 or 3 breaths, tuning into the internal sensations of your body, it brings you into the present, and it also disrupts negative self-referential rumination based on activity in the default mode network. Great. Second, a sense of the chest as a whole. As soon as we get a sense of things as a whole, that tends to move us into the right hemisphere for right-handed people, It's just switched for many left-handed people. But the point is that coming into a sense of the whole brings us into a kind of spatial, visual awareness that quiets verbal activity in the left hemisphere of the brain, which helps our mind become quieter, which is a big relief for many people, including me, who use words a lot. So and also that sense of things as a whole tends to activate particular circuits on the right side of the brain that support ongoing mindfulness and bring us into the present and help us step out of being so busy, getting one task done after another in a sequential way, which involves the midline of the cortex, and instead brings us out into kind of everything. Just that's the first breath alone. And then further, when we engage the sense of being cared about and being caring, that starts to work, including awareness of the area of the heart, the vagus nerve complex, which has two branches. The original one descends from the brainstem, goes down, and regulates the heart, the lungs, the viscera, helps to regulate them. The other, more modern branch goes up from the brainstem into the brain and facial nerves, and is very involved with social engagement, social experiences, especially positive social experiences. Well, when we tune into the feeling of being cared about, we're starting to engage the upper branch, which also creates activity in the lower branch that is calming and involves the parasympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system, which slows the heart rate and is calming and centering. Also, if you think about it, based on our evolutionary history and small hunter-gatherer bands, the feeling of being connected to others, caring flowing out and caring flowing in, is a primal signal of safety. So tapping in to a simple, authentic sense of caring and being cared about in a way that's real can help us feel safer, which lowers anxiety and also supports meditative practice, or besides feeling good, feeling less anxious, helps us be more gathered and collected rather than scattered and stressed, which is a really good thing. So that's some of what's happening in your brain just during those 3 breaths. And then at the very end, when I said, let's slow it down and really, really help it sink in, that increases what's called positive neuroplasticity, which means that we learn more from, we grow more from the experience we're having at the time, rather than having it just wash through the brain like water through a sieve. Instead, by keeping those neurons firing together so they wire more together, by staying with the experience, feeling it in the body, and recognizing what feels good about that, we help our brains change a little bit more than they otherwise would, so that increasingly, boom, boom, we can easily get in touch with that sense of open-hearted presence, and more it becomes in the background of our consciousness, even when we're not focusing on it directly, because we've helped ourselves learn more and gain more from our experience. In the last little part, we were helping our experiences leave lasting traces in neural structure or function. Any little time of practice usually will not change your life, but as Suzuki Roshi said, I'm sure there are enlightened moments. And these moments gradually string together and become the nature of your life every day.
Wow. And this brings me, because there's someone in the Q&A that is saying, could you say a little bit about your background, your journey, sure, as a human being, as a person, but also as a scientist, Buddhist practitioner, a teacher. What sure. I think it's important that people really, because that's really the beauty of what you're giving to us. It's really this combination of all these experience you've had as a psychologist too. Can you tell a little bit of your own journey?
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of years, so I will be very succinct. Briefly, so I'm American, obviously. I grew up in an intact, I would say lower middle class family, mainly around Los Angeles, very, very ordinary. I was raised a casual Methodist, a casual Christian. We maybe went to church twice a year on Christmas and Easter, and it was pretty casual. As a child, I was quite unhappy for different reasons. There was no abuse in my family, but my parents were not good at empathy. They themselves grew up in the Depression era. They were strict and critical and worried a lot and, just wanted to get things done. And so I did not feel seen deeply. And then I was very young going through school. I skipped a grade. I have a late birthday, so I was young. And I felt like an outsider a lot. So for me, there was a lot of unhappiness. And I also looked out in the world. And in my earliest memories as a young child, and I think many young children feel this way, there was a poignant, sad sense of so much unnecessary unhappiness. I did not know what to do about it, but it was clear that people were creating a lot of unnecessary arguing and worrying and frustration and stress and conflict, and they did not need to do it. Why? So that kind of started me in a way. So then I went to college when I was young in 1969. That was the beginning of the human potential movement. So immediately I was doing all kinds of wild and crazy things in my teens and 20s. I was introduced to meditation when I was 21, and I thought, wow, this is kind of amazing. We can calm down and sort of see the truth of our own minds and not be so hijacked by it, not be so helpless, carried away by it. I'm a stubborn and determined and independent kind of person, and I want to feel more autonomous. So much of what's in this Neurodharma program is about having more influence over who you are becoming and influence over your thoughts and feelings so you're not so swept away by them. So that started me on my path there with contemplative practice. After some years, I realized that I needed some formal training, so I went to graduate school in psychology. So now I'm combining at that point in my 30s, contemplative practice, contemplative wisdom, and formal traditional psychology, psychoanalytic training, very legitimate stuff. And then beginning probably about 20 or 30 years ago, enough information, enough science was developing about the brain that you could actually use it in practical ways. So then I started bringing that into modern brain science, modern psychology, ancient contemplative wisdom. And the combination of the three, to me, are enormously, enormously practical. I made a choice in my early 30s to become a therapist rather than a professor, an academic. And I think of myself as, I don't know how this will translate into French, but I think of myself as scientific, but not a scientist. I have a lot of respect for people who do real science, including on the brain. I try to integrate that new information and apply it. I'm a methods guy. I'm in the struggle with real people. I'm interested in practical means that will really, really help. I take a little bit of comfort in, I think, the example of the Buddha, who was very interested in what was true, but he was much more interested in what helped, what was actually effective and useful in the lives of regular people. So all that has brought me to the present. I'm increasingly interested in how we can apply these personal practices in ways that are helpful at a more global scale. I think it's okay to focus on the individual. Some people mainly focus on society. That's fine. The two of them work together. But in the late stages of my own career, I am more and more interested, having done a lot of work on the individual level, at what we can do more and more at the global level. So I'm married almost 40 years. Come Valentine's Day next year, 40 years. Wonderful, wonderful woman. We have 2 adult kids. Forrest and Laurel. I do a podcast with our son, Forrest, Being Well podcast. People can check it out. That's my life.
Yeah, and there's one program that you offer. It's unfortunately in English only, but it's what you call just one thing.
Yeah.
And that really, that's also, everything you do is really a combination of what you've said till now, but it's really those little practices that we can really apply to ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah. If we go back to the 7, to the program, maybe we can say a little bit about it, because you've really built it like it's something very progressive.
Yeah.
It's available. It's good for everyone, whether you are, as you said, beginner or a very trained meditator. You've built it with some teaching, but also some practice, some meditations, and some really interesting Q&A small sessions, or where you go deeper and deeper in the knowledge and in the thing that we can understand of what happens when we're upset, or when we're we have this thinking, this monkey mind. And why do you think it's so universal, what you're offering in this program?
That's a really great question. So there are different ways of understanding or talking about the absolute upper limits of human potential. There are different systems. For me, in a practical, secular sense, what I see in all of the great teachers, any great teacher, take your example. You could say Jesus, Buddha. You could say the Dalai Lama. You could say maybe you have a teacher, your kindergarten teacher, when you were a little kid, or maybe where your kids went to school. That kindergarten teacher was amazing. In all of these people, I think we find these same 7 qualities fully developed or highly developed. These 7 qualities, these 7 ways of being, these 7 experiences are also available to everyone, maybe in a simpler way, but we can all have a feeling for them. The first 3 are very clear and common. Steady, calm and steady, warm-hearted, feeling content, feeling fundamentally like it's okay in the moment. It may not be okay in the future, but it's basically okay in the present. There's enough already, now. Okay. We also have a sense from time to time of what it's like to be ourselves completely, with complete self-acceptance, not caught up in inner conflict, a sense of wholeness while being in the present and even feeling connected to everything, like we are a local expression of the universe as a whole. Maybe standing by the ocean, maybe looking up at the stars, maybe at the birth of our child. We know what they're like. And we even can have an intuition of a mysterious field of timeless possibility in which the universe unfolds. We can have a sense of that. We can all start wherever we are. In the metaphor, we all start down in the dusty plains, a lot of mess. And then gradually we see the foothills and we start walking toward them. And then we're back in the dusty plains. But each time we go to the foothills, we're more able to stabilize there. And then we start moving up into the mountains, the lower mountains. And then sometimes we find ourselves all the way back in the dusty plain. But the fact that we know what it's like to be in the mountains helps us in the dusty plains. And then increasingly, more and more, we stabilize. And then we start moving toward the peaks. And sometimes we find ourselves catapulted to the very top. We have some kind of remarkable breakthrough experience. It doesn't stabilize. It's not stable yet. Now we're back in the foothills or even the dusty plains, but we've known what reality is like when you're looking at it from the top of Mount Everest, from the top of the mountain. And over time, we can gradually, increasingly live there. That's the opportunity for all of us, and that's what I've tried to do in this program, in a way that both respects where we are and does not, it's called spiritually bypass, does not try to jump over any of the real suffering and healing and trauma we must deal with, while at the same time, do not lose sight of the snowy peaks. Do not lose sight of the real possibility for you in this life. Don't. And a very important point, as we develop in these ways, we have a sense that this has been the truth all along. It was just covered over. We were distracted from it, or the world was pushing us around, and it was hard to stay in touch with it. And so we have two truths that both live together, and they help each other. One is the truth of gradual change. There's a real truth to that. The body, the brain gradually changes in terms of letting go of what's harmful, releasing what is harmful, and taking in and bringing in what is beneficial, hardwired into your own body. That is a gradual developmental process. It's also true all along that underneath it all, always already, each one of us is already aware, awake, loving, and wise. Always already. We may not feel it, but it's always already true. And the two of these support each other.
Okay. And somebody's asking, what is the difference between the book and the program? Because it's more or less the same, but yeah.
The book is a book, so it's writing. You read it, although you can hear it in English. I don't know if there's an audio version in French. Probably not. That would be a good idea. The program is more extensive than the book in a lot of ways because I had an opportunity to talk about particular situations. The program also is based on a retreat I taught, a 10-day retreat in which we took one day for each of the 7 practices with some beginning and concluding material around it. So there's kind of a magic of the retreat. I was definitely in a zone in the retreat, in part because of my co-teachers who were wonderful people there and the participants. So I would say that's the difference. I think they're a very good package together. The way I wrote the book is that it really comes from my heart, and it is written in a way that's somewhat different from my other books in that I'm speaking from my own practice a fair amount, and I'm also bringing in this fantastic wisdom from the ages. I draw mainly on deep, deep, deep Buddhist wisdom, which I'm still working on, in my own practice to some extent. And it's fantastic to have access to the consciousness of people who really do live at the top of the mountain.
Yeah, so the idea is to do both. And I really can... I haven't done it the way we have to do it week by week, and I hope I will do it with the people that enroll in this program. But I really feel it's like you're taking our hand and you're saying, well, come with me and I will show you. And all your kindness is there. And I hope with the translation we really... did pass on this incredible energy you have. And it's like we want to dive into it. And the book, it's not your energy. as you say, well, we are reading it, so it's our own voice. Here, it's your voice, or we've recorded it with a professional comedian, and so I know he's incredible. He's doing an incredible work recording all that. So it's really I think that's a great difference. And it's good to go back to the book sometimes.
Oh yeah, and also I will come back for those in the program in a few weeks, and we will have a live Q&A session, which I love, talking with individual people about their particular questions and comments. So we will be doing that also for people who are in the program.
Yes, thank you for accepting that and offering that, and we'll have to find a date, and we'll communicate on that when we have the time and date scheduled.
I think if I could add this, Florence.
Yes, of course.
I think everyone, we all have this longing in our heart for a lasting happiness, love, and peace. We all long for that. Lasting. Not depending on the world around us or what we're thinking in the moment. A lasting feeling, fundamentally, of happiness, love, and inner peace. We long for that, including the highest forms of love and contentment and inner peace. And I think it's important to listen to the longing in our heart. Often we brush it aside. We say, well, that's good, not today. Not today. I had too much. No, not today. Or I don't deserve it because I was bad. Or often you were not bad. Other people were bad to you. You were not bad. It's really important to listen to that longing and honor it and act upon it and not wait any longer.
Okay, I have a question, and I think it's interesting to hear you in that. So it's Caroline who is saying she loves your book, The Hardwiring Happiness, and the understanding of the negative bias and how to cultivate a receptive brain is already helpful. That's what she's writing. However, studies show as well that we have an optimism bias, and it feels contradictory to me to have both. Could you clarify this? How do they relate to each other, those two biases?
It's a very good, slightly technical, excellent question. So we have a positivity bias in two ways. One, we tend to edit out pain from our personal memories. Yes, trauma memory does not edit out the pain, but often, like I'm a rock climber, after I look back on a day of climbing, I only remember the good feeling with my friend and getting to the top, and I do not remember how much my feet hurt in these tight shoes. So there is a positivity bias for recollections. Second, there is a kind of positivity bias, an optimism bias, for how people estimate the chance of success compared to the chance of failure in certain ways. And in laboratory experiments, you can pull out an optimism bias. All that is true. Alongside that is a very deep negativity bias for emotional learning, for somatic learning, in which the brain continually tends to scan for bad news. It overfocuses upon it when it finds it. You know, the world, it's like tunnel vision on that one light flashing red on the inner dashboard. Third, we overreact to the negative more than to the positive typically. We react more to loss than to gain, more to pain than to pleasure, more to disapproval than to approval, generally. And fourth, especially, we overlearn from the whole package. Right away, the brain learns from pain because in the wild, in the Stone Age, in Jurassic Park, over the 600 million year evolution of the nervous system, our ancestors needed to react more to sticks than to carrots, in effect. Because if they did not get a carrot today, they would have a chance at one tomorrow. But if they did not immediately learn from that stick, that predator that they just barely escaped, or aggression inside their bands as a primate or a Stone Age human, poof, no more carrots forever. So we have this very powerful negativity bias that, fifth, gradually sensitizes the brain, the amygdala and other parts of the brain, to the negative, so it reacts more intensely to them. There is nothing like this for positive experiences. So both are true. Yes, we do tend to edit out pain from personal memories, and yes, in some cases, there is an optimism bias. I think in America, at least, 80% of our teenagers think they will become either a rock star or a professional athlete. I think, okay, have a dream, but also a plan B. Have a plan B, just in case, right? That's an example of the optimism bias. But on the whole, I think that negativity bias is much more powerful. And it's very important to pay attention to. This does not mean to suppress or deny negative experiences. First and foremost, we need to be mindful of them, hold them in spaciousness, accept them, grow from them, learn from them, without being hijacked by them. And meanwhile, after we deal with the bad, which is absolutely primary, deal with the bad out in the world and inside yourself, deal with the bad. Also, turn to the good. What else is true? What are the things that are working? What are the things inside you that are okay? Who are the people who still care about you? What are the things you can still do inside yourself or in the world to make things better? Turn to the good. The flowers that are blooming, the people who are kind. Recognize the good. Don't be dominated by this Stone Age brain that draws us to the negative to survive in horrible conditions. Yes, if your conditions are horrible, the negativity bias is useful. But for most people, in most ordinary situations, including throughout the world, the negativity bias creates a lot of unnecessary suffering and conflict with other people and vicious cycles. My negativity bias bumps into your negativity bias. You come back with more negativity, which makes me even more negative. Boom. And now it's Game of Thrones. All right? So deal with the bad, turn to the good, and especially take in the good. Slow it down to internalize beneficial experiences so you gradually build up genuine inner strengths hardwired into your own nervous system over time. And as you turn to the good and take in the good, that will help you tomorrow be more effective in dealing with the bad in the lives of other people and also in yourself.
I will take a last question before trying to have people win the book or the audiobooks that we have in our catalog. Natalie, and I think it's related to what we discussed about at the very beginning before we opened the webinar. Natalie is saying, what do you do in case of dissociation created by a spiritual awakening, like you said, a bypass during a meditation? Because one of my patients has difficulty reintegrating her body after this because the return is very difficult. Yeah. And after having known such an experience of unconditional love, and somebody else in the chat is saying, I've felt this awakening state and I'm trying to get back to it constantly. And I want just to add, we talked about when we are profoundly depressed or bipolar, or this is things that we have to be careful about. And
so many important points here, and research has focused on the potential negative effects of meditative practice alongside its benefits for most people. And that's important to include both of those as really true. I should add that this is true about almost any kind of psychological practice, psychotherapy, gratitude practice, almost any kind of practice, for some people can have risks that need to be we need to be careful about, while still recognizing the opportunity and the value for most people in most situations. Okay, so with regard to the questions that came in, first, people who tend to dissociate, or people for whom it's hard to kind of come back in, I find it's very helpful to begin with extremely primal and simple, undeniable experiences that are comforting and reassuring in the present. Very simple experiences, for example, of what is it like to put on a little bit of a sweater if you're kind of cold, or to take one off if you're hot. What is it like to drink a little water if, like me right now, you're a little thirsty? In other words, really honor and respect the soft, furry animal of the body. Like, what does the body need? Does it feel a little better to move a little in your chair? Does it feel a little better to feel your feet on the ground? Very, very simple things like that. So we can engage those kind of practices. I call it notice that you're basically all right now, in an emotional, visceral, survival kind of sense. You're basically okay in the present. Whatever the past was, whatever the future may be, in the present, now you're basically okay. Feel it. And let yourself feel it, sometimes while also recognizing that you can be aware of the world around you. You're not going to be stupid. You're not going to lower your guard just because you are also recognizing and enjoying that in the present, you're basically okay. This practice is extremely useful, including in formal therapeutic settings for people in general who are grappling with anxiety. It's to come back to the simple truth of the living body. And that also helps with dissociation. So yes, the body may have a lot of trauma memory. So there's a fear of coming back into it from white light. You go out into white light, everyone loves everyone. Great, but yeah, what about reality? What about here and now? It can really be helpful to appreciate that in your own body are many, many experiences you're having currently that are actually neutral to positive. You are continuing to breathe. There is a calming as you exhale inherently, as the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system is engaged during exhalation. There is a simple process of eating and drinking that's okay. Simple pleasure, stroking your face, brushing your hair, very, very simple things, touching your cat, petting your dog. These are very important. They help bring us down out of a psychotic break or a dissociative episode, and they also are something we can build up over time. So the next time we practice, we're more able to stay in touch with our body while also becoming very open. So that's part one. And then part two, very quickly, it is challenging sometimes to integrate a breakthrough experience of non-dual, self-transcendent is the technical term, experience in which the sense of self falls away and the sense of the world is present with radiant perfection. Many people have had these experiences, and in the chapter on opening into allness, I actually unpack what could be happening in your brain during those experiences and what we can learn from them. If they come suddenly, yes, a person can suffer by trying to get back there. That's understandable, but it doesn't work. The contracted, stressful effort to get back to the top of the mountain blocks us from being on the mountain. And we need to engage practices more that are foundational, like I lay out in the book. We need to go back and fill in the infrastructure, the foundations that then enable us to stabilize and really use these spiritual breakthrough experiences. And you can open to moments of awakening many times a day. That's another Tibetan saying. moments of awakening many times a day, in which you have a brief flash of the body memory of what it was like for you at the top of the mountain. It's all right that it's just a glimpse. It's all right that it's just a flash, just a moment in your day. That's okay. And gradually those moments will stick together. The last thing is that if a person has a psychotic history, or a person is very, dissociative, perhaps with a borderline personality tendency that feels fragmented, not very glued together, or if a person is prone to manic episodes, initially they feel so good, but then they get, more and more problematic. Be careful. Be careful with any kind of practice, including the practices in this program. It does not mean you should not do it, but if you do it, walk carefully. Be careful so you don't fall off the path that works for you.
Thank you. Well, I think we're about to end this wonderful conversation with you. Thank you very much. The program is in French. It's translated into French and spoken into French, but it's also English with French subtitles. So you have the two options, so you can really choose your option. And you can buy both with 20 euros more. It's really, everything is on the webpage, so please go to the webpage. We'll put it again and again, but this is really a great, great program, and I really guarantee that. And you have a warranty, a lifetime warranty. If you're not happy with the program, we'll reimburse you. So, because we know you won't regret this. So, for the other ones, you can buy the book on Quantum Way website or in your library, personal library. That's for sure. Rick will schedule something in January, something to do a Q&A with the people who joined the program. The program will begin really on the 15th of December, but please register before, because it's important that we know who will be there and how we'll organize. And each week you will get an email and the content of each step one by one. So we begin together on December the 15th, and every week we'll do a step together. So thank you so much for being with us today. For many people it's night, so have a good night, but for you, have a good day.
Oh, thank you. I should say that I have maybe 3 words in French, and merci is one of them that I understand. So I want to thank all those who thanked me. I am able to see the chat. I looked through the chat as it came in, including a few chats in English, many chats in French. And
so you can see all the merci.
Yeah, that's right.
And
merci beaucoup. So I'm very glad about that, and I really thank all of you.
Yeah, I do too.
And especially I thank Quantum Way. I thank you, Florence. I thank my wonderful simultaneous translator. I thank Mehdi.
Yeah, thank you to Anne-Laure.
Yeah.
She's doing an incredible job behind. And thank you, Mehdi, for being there and helping everyone get the right language and the right link and everything. So it's a great team. And thank you for everybody, Mark and Alice and Isabel and Lise and, well, everyone who's working on your program. Jean-Marc, who is recording. So hope you'll enjoy it, and see you soon.
See you soon. Bonsoir.
Bye-bye. Thank you.